As a professional creative, that is to say, someone whose job is to repeatedly go mad in various carefully directed ways, the hardest times are when you don't have an ongoing project. With Starstruck Vagabond and Galaxy for Good both out, I'm in a sort of respite in-betweeny period, where I wait for a new idea that really seizes my interest. Spare creative juices are sloshing about, and without an outlet it gets wasted on momentary fancies. For example, I've been having this weird urge to draw a map of video game world. Not a video game world, the video game world. Back in my video about colours in games, I was talking about my ambition to put together a League of Extraordinary Gentlemen style massive crossover of video game stories. I don't know how much effort I'm prepared to put into it, or indeed what form it could possibly take. If we're talking about a novel, it would be a story about a world that makes use of a miraculous substance with the power to heal all bodily damage, possibly originating in a green herb or a red fruit, and the drama that ensues when it turns out certain corporations are trying to use it to make super soldiers and or zombie viruses. And when it turns out to be really volatile and people have to stop storing it all over their workplaces in prominent red barrels. But as for what characters to throw into that, the thing is, League of Extraordinary Gentlemen had the advantage of working with characters in the public domain. Any attempt to team up video game IPs is going to get slapped with cease and desists so hard it's hardly worth bothering to think about. But in the second volume of the original League of Extraordinary Gentlemen comic, there was an extra feature called The New Traveller's Almanac, in which writer Alan Moore described a journey around the world, detailing all the fictional countries and islands found there, region by region. And that sounded like fun. To take a map of the world and mark on it as many fictional locations from video games as possible. So for a start, Black Mesa Research Facility is in New Mexico. That's an easy one. Silent Hill is canonically in Maine, according to the wiki. The movie says it's in West Virginia, but we're categorically ignoring that. We're strictly sticking to information provided by the games, so it's going in Maine. I guess I'm restricting this to games of a certain level of notoriety upwards. If we have to include every fictional haunted town that's been in every indie horror game, New England's gonna get real fucking crowded. But this isn't just an exercise in arbitrarily dropping pins in American states where a fictional town could plausibly be. I want to replace as many real-world locations as possible with their video game equivalents to maximize crossover potential. So here's an easy one. New York City can be replaced with Liberty City from GTA. And now any game that ostensibly took place in New York, such as The Division, Prototype, or Crysis 2, actually happened in Liberty City. I guess Division takes place in Liberty City after the other two games were finished smashing the fuck out of it. Meanwhile, New Orleans can be replaced with New Bordeaux from Mafia 3, Saint Denis from Red Dead Redemption 2, or New Marais from Infamous 2. I guess we either conflate those together or say there's three really similar cities in Louisiana right next to each other. Across the pond, England, what the fuck's that? There's only one powerful island nation off the coast of northwest Europe, and that's Albion, where the Fable games were set, wherein, amongst other places, we can find the bustling city of Dunwall, which was the centre of the Industrial Revolution in the 19th century, sparked by the activities of the radical mechanist movement after their schism with the Hammerite Order. Are you having fun? I'm having fun. What else? Just Cause 3 was set on a Mediterranean island called Medici, so we'll slap that in over the top of Sicily. Far Cry 6 was on a Caribbean island called Yara, so we'll say that's Cuba. So far, we haven't even had to change the number of letters. And then, of course, there's that gloomy region in Central Europe, which on our map will be marked as Castlevania. But wait! Castlevania can be on the map, but it can't be ruled by Dracula, because Dracula isn't a character original to video games. We're gonna have to swap him out for whichever video game vampire character is the most like Dracula. I'm gonna go with Kane from the Legacy of Kane series. Although I'm open to alternative suggestions, because this means the hero of Symphony of the Night in this world would have to have been named Niak. I'm not going to list every video game location I can think of and what they can be swapped with in this video. I'll just invite you all to post suggestions in the comments or in the Semi-Ramblomatic channel of the Second Wind Discord so we can hash out a master list and start drawing up this map. Or rather, two maps. See, I want to make one map of contemporary Earth with all the countries and places that presently exist, and one map of ancient prehistorical Earth, because that, friends, is where we're going to put all the fantasy worlds. I think a lot of them are going to end up in Europe. The country that will eventually be named Albion spent some time being called Britannia, and was ruled over by some twat called Lord British. Lord Rand from Dark Souls gives me an Eastern European, Poland-y, Slovakia-y sort of vibe. You know, somewhere really depressing. The Kingdom of Daventry I'd probably put somewhere around the Luxembourg area, although most of Central Europe is covered by the kingdoms in the Elder Scrolls games. Cyrodiil was the Roman Empire, being the home of the Imperials and all that. And Skyrim was obviously ancient Scandinavia. Although that being the case, that means Kratos was living in Skyrim during the events of the last two God of War games, and he wasn't fighting Thor and Odin, he was up against the gods of the Elder Scrolls universe like Akatosh and Kain. Thanks, Elder Scrolls Wiki. So, Oblivion, as explored in the Elder Scrolls Oblivion, must be the video game world's equivalent of Hell. We can't use Hell, because that's copyright the Bible. So Doom and the Dante's Inferno game must have taken place in some Hell-adjacent territory, like Oblivion, or possibly the Nether. But I digress. If we get away from European-style fantasy settings, we can move to other parts of the world, like that quaint little part of ancient Arabia, where can be found a land inhabited by short, stubby people dressed in traditional Arabian style, and whose name in the local language translates roughly to the Mushroom Kingdom. As for Hyrule, I'd actually put that in the Americas, going by the Native American, Incan, and Mayan influence at various points in the visual design of Zelda games. Wait, Yahtzee, don't a lot of these fantasy video games deal with major apocalyptic events that destroy the entire world? Like how every Dark Souls game is about a slow burn apocalypse, and that whole business with the moon in Majora's Mask? How would those fit into the timeline? Well, I think it's reasonable that ancient cultures might fail to grasp that the world is much larger than just them, and much of what they would think of as an apocalypse was actually fairly localized. I mean, the story of Noah's Ark talks about the whole world being flooded, and I don't think that literally happened. If there's any truth in it, it was probably just an embellishment of, a relatively big flood. Wait, again, Yahtzee, all these fantasy worlds were densely packed with monsters and magic, which seem to have mostly vanished in the contemporary era. What happened there? Well, presumably humanity lived alongside magical creatures for a while. There's certainly some lingering magical influence over modern-day Japan that means half the wildlife and household pets have mysterious elemental powers, and there are sentient blue hedgehogs running around in sneakers. But at some point around the turn of the millennium, tensions must have bubbled up, resulting in a large-scale conflict between humanity and monsters. A war documented by several games, including Quake 1, Alone in the Dark 2008, Legendary, etc., and mentioned in the backstory of Castlevania Aria of Sorrow. The vampire Cain must have been the monster leader, but following his defeat at the hands of a coalition between the Belmont family and peacekeeping forces like the EDF and UNATCO, his army of demonic minions promptly surrendered and were exiled to the planet Mars, where centuries later they would make trouble for the UAC. Wait, again, Yahtzee, I think you've just started talking complete bollocks. And not just any bollocks. Fan fiction bollocks, the worst kind. Yes, well, as I said, this is the sort of thing I find fun to think about. To reiterate, do post in the comments your ideas for what real-life locations can be replaced with video game original equivalents, and whether they belong on the ancient or modern map. Maybe we can make a third map for future post-apocalyptic settings as well. Stitch together all the Fallout games to cover America, pop Half-Life 2 into Eastern Europe, and make sure to quarantine Albion so we happy few can't get out.